Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In a small town in Eastern Europe, there lived a Jewish woman named Rachel Steinberg. She was known as a hardline activist who frequently attacked Islamic teachings on social media and in public debates. Her conservative family background, a childhood filled with fear due to conflict, and the influence of biased Western media had made her closed to Islam. For years, Rachel had considered the Quran a man-made book unworthy of respect. Her hatred culminated in a hot, intense summer. During an anti-Islam demonstration, Rachel decided to take extreme action, burning several copies of the Quran in public, broadcasting it live on social media. Dozens of people in attendance cheered, but many more watched in anger and sadness. The video went viral, being shared millions of times. However, what Rachel never imagined was what would happen next. Since the video went viral, many people have been curious about why Muslims are so angry and emotional about the burning of their holy book. They have begun to investigate, reading translations of the Quran, watching religious studies, and listening to explanations from religious scholars. A strange phenomenon occurred. Instead of inciting hatred, many people became increasingly interested in Islam. Thousands of people in various European countries began studying the contents of the Quran. They discovered verses that spoke of justice, compassion, and eternal truth. One such verse was Surah Al-Hijr, verse 9. Indeed, it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed we will be its guardian. This verse left many speechless. How could this book claim to be eternally preserved? Yet despite being burned, its contents and memorization lived on in the hearts of millions. The story became even more shocking when an old church in the suburbs where Rachel lived, led by Pastor Jonathan Miller, held an interfaith discussion. Initially, their goal was simply to discuss the social impact of burning the holy book. However, when they invited a religious teacher to explain the meaning of the Quran, the atmosphere changed. The initially skeptical congregation began to be touched by the explanation of the teachings of monotheism, the stories of the prophets, and the teachings of noble morals in Islam. Pastor Jonathan himself was impressed when he heard that the prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, was highly revered in Islam. A few weeks later, a historic decision was made. The entire congregation of the church, about 87 people, including the pastor, decided to convert to Islam. This event became major news, shocking many. Amidst all the chaos and media scrutiny, Rachel felt her life was falling apart. She was being slandered, criticized, and even losing her job. However, during this time of despair, she was personally invited by Pastor Jonathan, now Ustaz Yahya, to speak. The meeting lasted a long time. Rachel, who initially came with hardened hearts, began to soften as she heard the stories of the church members who found peace after converting to Islam. They shared how verses from the Quran answered questions they had been holding on to. Rachel began to waver. Secretly, she began reading a translation of the Quran. Day by day, her resentment turned into curiosity, then admiration. Until one night, he cried reading Surah Al-Ikhlas, feeling the beauty of the simple but meaningful sentences. Say, He is Allah, the Almighty. Allah is the one from whom everything is asked. He is begotten and unbegotten, and there is nothing equal to him. Several months after the arson, Rachel stood before thousands of people at a large event at the city mosque. With a trembling voice, he recited the Shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Tears of emotion broke out. From a hater of Islam, she turned into a devout Muslim woman. His story is a symbol of God's power in turning human hearts around. The action, which was originally intended to insult Islam, actually became a way of guidance for thousands of people and a whole church to enter the religion of Allah. News of Rachel Steinberg's burning of the Quran made headlines in various international media outlets. Television, radio, and online news portals in Europe, America, and even the Middle East broadcast it repeatedly. Many condemned her actions, but what was unexpected was the massive surge in searches for information about Islam. Google recorded a 400% surge in searches for "What is the Quran?" in just a few days. People who had never read a single verse began to consult online translations of the Quran. Some found truth in the simple verses, while others were moved by the beauty of the language and the depth of its meaning. In Norway, a Dawa organization reported that in the 2 weeks following the incident, more than 1,200 people officially declared their faith. In France, mosques reported an increase in new congregants wanting to learn to read the Quran. Even in America, several church communities held open discussions about Islam, and many members decided to embrace the faith. Western media, which initially focused only on the provocative aspects of Rachel's actions, began reporting on unexpected conversions after the Quran burning. The world was stunned. Hatred had actually given rise to a wave of guidance. Pastor Jonathan Miller, the leader of a long-serving church in the suburbs of Rachel, initially dismissed the incident as merely political. However, he felt compelled to find out why Muslims were so determined to defend their holy book. During an interfaith discussion, he asked a local religious teacher to explain the history and contents of the Quran. The explanation touched his heart. He discovered many similarities between Islamic teachings and the teachings of Jesus he knew, even purer than anything he had ever heard before. Month after month, Pastor Jonathan encouraged his congregation to study Islam, until one spring morning, he stood before his entire church congregation, dressed in a simple black suit and tie, and declared, "My brothers, I have found the truth I have been seeking. I choose to bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." Weeping with emotion broke out. That day, 87 church members recited the Shahada with her. When Rachel heard the news that a church had converted to Islam, she was shocked. Curiosity mixed with anger led her to meet Pastor Jonathan, now Ustaz Yahya. That meeting was a turning point. Rachel heard firsthand the testimonies of people who were once skeptical but now felt an extraordinary sense of calm after embracing Islam. They said that the fire that burned the mushaf actually lit the light of faith in their hearts. Ustaz Yahya said to her gently, "Rachel, you burn paper, but you cannot burn the word of Allah. It is eternal, and now it burns in our hearts." After that meeting, Rachel began secretly reading a translation of the Quran. At first, it was only a page or two, but over time, she couldn't stop. Night after night, she cried, feeling something she had never experienced before, a deep calm. Climaxically, she recited Surah Al-Ikhlas and Surah An-Nas before bed. In her dream, she saw a white light stretching from the sky and a gentle voice reciting verses that warmed her chest. That morning, Rachel contacted Ustaz Yahya and said, "I want to become a Muslim." At the city's large mosque, hundreds of people gathered to witness the historic moment. Rachel, now wearing a simple white hijab, recited the Shahada with a trembling voice. Tears, takbir, praise be to God, and hugs accompanied her as she entered a new life. Now Rachel goes by her new name, Miriam Steinberg. She spends her time teaching people about Islam, even speaking at international Dawah events, telling her own story. Ironically, the very act she once used to insult Islam became a door of guidance for thousands of people in a full church. The world has realized truth cannot be destroyed by fire. From that day on, news of Rachel Steinberg, now known as Miriam Steinberg, became global news. Media outlets that had previously described her as the Jewish woman who burned a Quran now carried a new headline, from Quran burner to Muslim preacher. She conducted interview after interview. Many wanted to know what had made her change so drastically. In each instance, Miriam always said, "I tried to burn the truth, but the truth burned my ignorance. I used to feel strong when I held a match, but it turned out I was burning a wall that had been blocking the light of Allah from entering my heart." The guidance that came through this incident was not limited to Miriam or one church. Across Europe, news of hundreds of people converting to Islam each week was an unprecedented phenomenon. In Germany, a Catholic family who watched a television broadcast about a Quran burning decided to buy a translation of the Quran. The father, a former atheist, wept when he read verses explaining life after death and God's justice. The entire family finally declared their faith in Islam during Ramadan. In Sweden, a teenager who initially mocked Islam at school changed completely after reading Surah Maryam. He was so touched by the story of the noble prophet Jesus, Isa in Islam, that he converted to Islam along with 3 of his friends. The old church belonging to Ustaz Yahya, formerly Pastor Jonathan, underwent major changes. After the entire congregation converted to Islam, the building was renovated. The large cross on the front was replaced with a magnificent Allah calligraphy, and the bell was replaced with the call to prayer, which sounds 5 times daily. In the main hall, shelves filled with Qurans translated into various languages were made available to visitors. Many non-Muslims came simply to see the changes, but left with touched hearts. Many of them later returned, not as guests, but as fellow believers. Despite becoming a Muslim, Maryam was not free from trials. Many of her old friends in the Jewish community were angry and considered her a traitor. She lost most of her social network, and some of her family even cut ties with her. Yet Maryam remained steadfast. She said, "I lost some people, but I gained Allah. That's not a loss, that's a victory." She began actively giving sermons at mosques, interfaith seminars, and even universities. Every time she told her story, she never forgot to mention that it is Allah who turns people's hearts. The mass conversion to Islam following the Quran burning incident continued. Within a year, reports from international dawah organizations recorded a 300% increase in the number of converts in several European countries. Even in the city where Maryam lived, a large factory with a majority of non-Muslim employees held regular Islamic studies. After 6 months, more than half of its employees had embraced Islam. Ustaz Yahya said, "The fire that was once meant to extinguish the light of Islam has instead become a torch that illuminates the path of thousands of people to Allah." On the 1-year anniversary of her conversion to Islam, Maryam stood on a stage at a large conference in Turkey. Thousands of people from various countries attended. In a loud voice, he said, "I stand here not to boast, but to prove Allah's promise. They want to extinguish Allah's light with their mouths, even with fire, but Allah will perfect His light, even though the disbelievers hate it. I used to hate Islam, but now I love it more than life, and I want the whole world to know. If Allah can change a heart like mine, He can change anyone's heart." The room was filled with the sound of takbir, praise be to Allah. Many who came just to hear his story left with a renewed sense of faith. Maryam didn't stop at being a symbol of change. She decided to dedicate her life to preaching. In 2 years, she visited more than 25 countries, attending conferences, seminars, and interfaith meetings. In each place, she recounted her journey from hatred to love, from fire to light. In Bosnia, she met war victims who had lost their families, yet they forgave their enemies because of the teachings of Islam. In Palestine, she witnessed children who had memorized the Quran despite living under oppression and threats. All of this further strengthened her belief that the Quran is truly protected by Allah. The culmination of her journey came when she set out to perform Umrah for the first time. As she stood before the Kaaba, tears welled in her eyes. She remembered her past, when she had arrogantly lit a fire to burn the Mushaf. Now she stood in the holiest place on earth, holding the Quran with love. At the Grand Mosque, an elderly Arab woman approached her. The woman said haltingly, in English, "I saw your story on television. You made our children love the Quran more than ever. May Allah bless your life." Maryam hugged the woman, crying speechlessly. She felt that her entire journey from darkness to light had indeed been ordained by Allah. The church that once housed Ustaz Yahya is now the An-Nur Mosque. The building was not demolished, but rather respectfully restored to preserve its history. The mosque has become a symbol of unity and tolerance. Every year, the mosque holds an open mosque day where non-Muslims are welcome to enter to learn about Islam. Many visitors ultimately decide to embrace Islam after hearing the story of the mass conversion of the church congregation. In a speech in London, Maryam reminded the younger generation of Muslims, "Never be ashamed of being Muslim. Never be afraid to carry the Quran in your hands. This book has not only changed my life, but also the lives of thousands of people who never imagined they would pronounce the Shahada." She emphasized that challenges and attacks against Islam will never cease, but that Allah will always protect this religion. Maryam believed that every test is merely a doorway to greater victory, as long as Muslims remain united and hold fast to the truth. Today, years after the incident, Maryam Steinberg is remembered not as a Quran burner, but as a lighter of faith in the hearts of millions. From a single act of hatred, a wave of guidance emerged that spread throughout the world. Her story is a lesson that Allah can turn things around in ways we never imagined. What was meant to destroy Islam actually strengthened it. What was meant to extinguish the light actually made it shine brighter. And in each of her sermons, Maryam always concluded with a phrase that has become a hallmark of her preaching. I used to burn paper, but now I ignite hearts.